Okay, that was a great case study. I want to thank Robert and Jamie for going into that level of detail. Now that we've seen how you can leverage artificial intelligence in business to produce a financial outcome, we're going to shift over to the government, where I came out of. And so once again, my name is Rick Piña. I'm the Chief Technology Advisor for Public Sector at Worldwide Technology. I served in the United States Army for 25 years. So I get to talk about the government now. And so we're going to be talking about machines and the AI journey across the government. I'm excited because we have great panelists today. So we have one from the Department of Defense and one from the Federal Civilian Agencies, or the GSA. I'm going to ask Colonel Doug Drakeley and Krista Kinnard to introduce themselves. So let's start with you first, Doug. Just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your role. And then we'll do the same thing with you, Krista. Let's get started with you, Doug.
Yeah, Rick, thank you. Great to be with you this afternoon. And I work for the Joint Artificial Intelligence Center, which is the DoD's Center of Excellence for AI, accelerating the adoption of AI across the department and helping make that happen at scale across the department quickly. I am the industry outreach officer for the JAIC, as we call it, and basically that means I work with industry, with the AI industry, to try to help them do business or encourage them to do business with the department.
Thank you, Doug. And Krista?
Hello, everyone. My name is Krista Kinnard, and I am a director here at the Artificial Intelligence Center of Excellence at GSA. And the primary mission of GSA is to serve the rest of the federal government. So really what my job is to start engaging with the rest of the federal government around artificial intelligence, helping them think through where is this application of technology relevant and how can it be driving outcomes and driving missions as an enabling technology. So a huge part of my job is talking to a bunch of different federal agencies, ranging from defense, intelligence, healthcare, federal, civilian, small, large, medium, you name it, we're working with that federal agency. And it's really exciting to see these federal agencies start thinking about innovative technology, specifically automation and artificial intelligence, as something that can empower them and enable them to meet their missions, which I think is a really worthy goal. And I think is one of the things that I'm most proud of in my work is we're not using AI to generate financial benefit. We are using AI to help serve the people of this country, which I think is really, really important. Another huge thing that I do is I help run our federal artificial intelligence community of practice. So that's where the federal community can come together to talk about what it is that's important to them in artificial intelligence, right? So topics that come up very frequently are around responsible use of AI and ethical implementation. How do you do these implementations in program offices where they're not necessarily staffed by technologists, but they are staffed by people who know their mission very, very well and want to be bringing in innovative technology as a way to help them maybe make more efficient or speed up or expedite whatever it is that they're focusing on. So it's a real pleasure to be here with you all today, and I'm hoping that we can get deep into the weeds on how the federal government can leverage this technology.
Thank you so much. Thank you both for the introduction there and the breadth. And I came out of the DoD space, so I can relate to Doug, and I thought the DoD was big when you're thinking Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and defense agencies. But the breadth of the federal government, like 400 plus agencies, the federal government is huge. So I'm sure that that your calendar is fairly busy, Krista. So I'm going to start the first question, a two-part question, and we'll start with you, Krista, and then we'll go to you, Doug. So two-part question. What are the biggest use cases that you see for artificial intelligence in the government, and what do you think are some of the roadblocks or challenges to actually getting there?
Yeah, so those are really great questions. And as far as use cases go, I have to say I have been blown away by the federal government's ability to think critically and creatively about this technology. And again, large agencies, small agencies, agencies in between, they're really thinking about this technology, and you're starting to see pilots and proof of concepts, and even honestly, some emerging technologies and production level capabilities in a lot of these agencies in a couple of areas that I think are really important. Cybersecurity is a huge one, right? Using artificial intelligence and automation to really streamline that process and make sure we're embedding security in all things that we're doing. Another one that I really like to get on my soapbox about is forms. If anyone has ever done anything with the federal government in any capacity, they have filled out at least one form. I'm gonna bet it's more than one, right? And so the ability to use artificial intelligence and automation technologies, not only to, one, digitize some of these forms, right? Because many of them still exist in paper format, but also extract the information from those forms and start digesting it and combing through it and actually producing insight and analysis of the content that makes up all of the kind of the free data fields that exist in these forms is really interesting. Another key area I think that we're starting to see the adoption of artificial intelligence is in natural language processing, right? The government has a lot of information that's just stored as free text fields or bound up in PDFs or something like that. And the amount of time it takes a human to go through all of that reading, all that processing is incredibly long and incredibly labor intensive. But when we can bring artificial intelligence and automation to that technology, we're not necessarily replacing what a human would do, but we're making that human really be able to do what they're good at. Think critically and analytically, given a bunch of information, right? So I think there's a lot of really great application of artificial intelligence. You're also seeing some really creative use of artificial intelligence through computer vision, right? The government has a large range of imagery that they use, and being able to consume that imagery quickly and efficiently, I think is really fascinating. But so to answer your second question, what are some of the challenges? I think it's really exciting to see what industry is able to produce. And I think every day we're seeing industry really pushing the limit of what this technology can do. What can this model do, right? New models are popping up, pre-trained models. How can we leverage transfer learning? A lot of that is being used really creatively. You can't just go to the federal government and say, here's your machine learning, right? There's a process, right? And if you think about that program level person or that person who's working on direct mission delivery, they already have an entire business process around what it is that they do. They already have policy around what they do. So how do we bring in this new technology and fit it into an existing environment, or identify where there need to be changes made in the existing process to allow for this technology to really make the value that you need it to be able to make? So there is a big people component to it. The other big challenge that I think that we're seeing is, all right, so industry's coming and saying, hey, we can build you a great machine learning model that's going to be able to process, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of different regulation documents, let's say. Well, I mean, each agency is a little bit different. They might have specific data. And so I think that really a big challenge here is leveraging data as a strategic asset, right? And that's part of the federal data strategy, but you really aren't going to get good outcomes from your artificial intelligence models if you don't have data that is in a consumable format and in a format that a model is able to consume and produce meaningful output with. So those are the two biggest challenges that we're seeing. But I think that being a part of the federal community of practice around this, we're starting to see people think creatively around how to address those.
It's exciting. You actually got me excited when you talked about the forms. Anything that you could do to make my life easier when dealing with the federal government, I would very much, thank you. So now over to the Colonel here, Doug. Same question. What are, within the context of the DoD, biggest use cases that you guys are seeing, and then also the challenges or roadblocks?
Yeah, thanks, Rick. Krista hit on a couple of them. Obviously, we're very interested in cybersecurity, and we're expanding that out really into more of the information dominance, information understanding of what's going on, both in cybersecurity realm, but also the electronic magnetic spectrum and information operations. So those are use cases that we see potential of great advantage of using AI in. We also see huge use cases in maintenance. And one of our early projects was on predicting engine failure in the H860. And with that, from that, we learned, once you're able to predict or make inferences about engine failure, then you also need to worry about where are the parts to replace that, right? Where are the mechanics to take care of that? So that's really leads you into the logistics area. So really our focus has been not only in predictive maintenance, but also grown into logistics. I think there's a great opportunity there. There's also, Krista kind of hit on this process transformation, which how do we do business inside of the government? We've got a lot of folks who have to put in duplicative information into different systems. How can we automate that kind of information across the enterprise and then use artificial intelligence to make smart judgments about it? I think also the health system, not only within DoD, but really probably as Krista knows, across the entire federal government, can really take advantage of artificial intelligence and what's happening there. Medical imaging, medical drug development, diagnosis development, huge opportunities there. And again, these are all focus areas for the Joint Artificial Intelligence Center. We have a warfighter health team that's working on those issues. On the logistics, we have a joint logistics team. We have a joint information warfare team working on joint information warfare. I think to answer your second question about what are some of the roadblocks, there are a lot of roadblocks. We have siloed organizations that are used to doing things they're in their own way, and the power from AI comes in sharing data and getting data to the right places into the right AI systems. And so just that data ownership and who has the rights to the data, how can it be used, security of that data, that's one of the big things that we have to face. And we're a very large organization set up to change slowly. So getting that incentive to change quickly is something that is, from senior leadership on down across the department, a very important thing for us to do. So getting that sense of urgency and making changes more rapidly are important.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that answer. I would say that unfortunately for me, I'm very familiar with the silos of excellence within the Pentagon. There are many folks in uniform that are really good at creating those silos. Since you both talked about data, let me ask you a question about data. So you can't really have artificial intelligence without basically the fuel to support it, which is data. So how are you approaching, or really an understanding as it relates to collecting the data, providing governance, opening up the data, giving access to it so that you can actually apply artificial intelligence algorithms and technology? So let's start with you first, Krista.
Yeah, absolutely. So here at the Centers of Excellence, we have our Artificial Intelligence Center of Excellence. We have 6 other centers also. So we have one for cloud and infrastructure. We have one for call centers. We have one for customer experience. We also have one for data and analytics because there's a lot to be done to get your data house in order before you can even start thinking about artificial intelligence, right? So building out data governance models, right? Building out ownership, right? Building out stewardship models. These are all really key elements, because when somebody in the organization comes up to you and raises their hand and says, I'm in such and such organization and I want to do an AI project, the first question is going to be, great, where's your data? There need to be answers to those questions, and there needs to be strategic planning around how are we sharing our data across an organization? How is it housed? And if you're going to be pulling data from multiple different systems, who owns them? Are they internal to the organization? Are they external to the organization? Because not only are there technical challenges in moving data around and sharing it, there also may be cost associated with that. One, just moving large amounts of data can be very expensive, but some data ownerships and some data is not free, which means that you may have to pay for access to certain types of data, which is certainly fine, but there are things that you need to be thinking about as you're building out your AI infrastructure. That said, I think that there's a way to be building your data house, right? And really be getting your data house in order and still be running some AI pilots, right? I think that as you are going through your data and really structuring your organization to be able to share your data and to be able to encourage different people to be leveraging that data in different ways, you can start to identify, all right, here are certain types of data that I think would make for really good, you can gain a lot of insight out of this data, right? So you can start doing pilots, you can start playing around with it. Because I think anyone who's worked with data will tell you, it takes a little bit to get to know a data set, and it especially takes a long time to get to know multiple data sets, how they're dynamic, how they grow, how they change as you continue to collect new information, right? And so if you can be experimenting with it while you're building your infrastructure, one is informing the other, right? As you're playing with it, you understand your data better, so you can house it better, so you can organize it, so you can strategize around it better. But as you're modeling that, right, you start to identify, what are my data needs? What else am I going to need to be able to successfully be doing some modeling, be bringing artificial intelligence as an enabling capability to leverage this data? So I don't know if that answers your question, but those are my thoughts around on how important data is for artificial intelligence.
No, you did a great job. And so now as I go over to the Defense Department, I'm going to ask you, Doug, same question, but maybe in a different light, is as you think through all the challenges related to data, and like you said, the DoD has historically kind of stored data in silos of excellence. Does the JAIC really have the authorities, or like, basically like the executive agent for data, to kind of force some of these things to happen? How are you navigating through the data challenges? Because without the data, you really won't have AI.
No, that's a good point, Rick. And I think the department recognizes the importance of data. There's the cliches of data is the new electricity, or data is the new oil for these AI systems. But the recognition of that, within the DoD, we have Dave Spurk, who's the new chief data officer for the entire department. We have a lot of efforts inside of the JAIC to look at data governance across the department to improve and enhance, our access to data. And I think that is, we have also created, executive steering group across the DoD, where we have 3-star level sponsorship for bringing, these data governance issues to the table and making sure that we address them, because we all know that without the data and the data management, we're not going to get good AI systems. And so we've got to find a way to get at data. This is not unlike problems that large industry faces, though, right? I've seen the same issue in large telecommunication companies, where they're multiple divisions. They've got data ownership. This is my customer, but I'm a customer across many of those different organizations. They all have to get at this problem of data governance and data ownership, and make sure that happens. And so the JAIC is building a joint common foundation for AI that'll allow us to get the data or get access to that data in a way that will allow us to enable the AI systems that we want to enable across the department.
Thank you. That was very much appreciated. So let me shift to the term AI journey. Today we've been saying AI journey repeatedly. So let's just talk about it within the context of the DoD and the federal government. There's no such thing as like an AI box, right? So I'm in industry now. I retired from the military. I can't sell you an AI box. There's nothing you just plug into the wall and say, now I have AI. Although there are some customers who say, hey, can I get some of that AI, right? So what is the AI journey? We already talked about the data, and obviously we're saying that you have to have data in some type of structured format, some type of governance and oversight. Of course, data is fueling AI, but can you kind of just articulate within, let's start with you, Doug, within the DoD, what is the journey like? Are there some milestones, some things that as you kind of help, let's say the services go from where they are to where they're projecting to be, what does that journey look like to get to, like, right now, not really a data-rich environment, or not having data-informed decisions to getting into the future, being able to do so and having it powered by AI?
Yeah, that's a great question, Rick. I think the DoD, the JAIC has taken the position that we really need to partner with the services and the combatant commanders to get at this issue on the AI journey, right? We need to identify areas that are ripe for AI applications. And that means you got to identify the right problems, right? The right challenges where you need or where you can apply AI. There's places where it's not appropriate to apply AI technology yet. And again, part of that starts with, as you discussed, data and the access to data. So first, if you don't have the data or you don't have the data in a format that you can use in an AI system, that's going to be a challenge. So the AI journey today is really helping, and the way that we structured this was around these mission initiatives that I talked about briefly, is then going out and saying, let's start with, what's in the art of the possible today, right? And so in health, can we bring medical imaging to the healthcare system with AI to improve the diagnosis of, cancer or other diseases? And let's work with the Defense Health Agency and the services on making that happen and building capability, in that way. So that's really our journey is more of a partnership and seeking the right problems and asking the right questions that are solvable with AI and helping guide those discussions.
Thank you. Thank you. And Krista, give us an understanding of what that journey looks like within the federal government.
Yeah, so I think that Doug touched on some really important things. And one thing that I think is really important to recognize about any individual agency or organization's AI journey is that it is not linear, right? We are not starting at point A, trying to get to point C or D or F, right? This is a circular journey and it is iterative, right? And that's really, really critical because what you're doing fundamentally with artificial intelligence is training a model to learn, right? And it is going to be able to learn from a corpus of data to make a decision about something new. That means that it's constantly taking in new input and you need to be able to adapt and you need to be monitoring that model to be able to make sure that this system that you build is constantly doing what it is that you intend it to do. So what that means for an AI journey is you're going to start small, right? And you're going to start, I think like what Doug said is you can't just start with saying, we're going to do AI, right? Like, no, let's take a step back. Let's evaluate our organization. Let's evaluate our business and identify some of our key challenges and evaluate if there are use cases that are appropriate for artificial intelligence. I think design is a critical element of the AI journey. And that's really where we start to see the embedding of responsible development in the artificial intelligence journey, right? And in the artificial intelligence life cycle from the onset, thinking about how are users going to interact with this? How are users going to understand and consume the output of this? How are they going to interact with it? How is feedback collected? What are some of the intended and unintended consequences of what it is that we're building, right? Once you've kind of gone through this design element, then you can start thinking around, okay, we have identified that we have some good use cases for artificial intelligence. Now we got to figure out how are we actually going to bring in this technology? And there's a bunch of ways that you can do that. You can build it yourself. You can buy it completely. You could get it off the shelf, or you could custom design something, right? So really having that technical evaluation and doing that build versus buy analysis to be able to decide where are we going to sink our time and energy and effort into building out this solution is really important. And not just doing that for a single project, but also setting up the organizational mechanism by which you will be doing this for your entire AI program, right? And this is where, again, that iteration is really important. Maybe the first time you do this, it is just for one project, but eventually you're going to have 2 projects, 5 projects, 10 projects, right? So you need to be able to grow your organization on this AI journey, not just in terms of how many projects do we have, and how do we get from I have an idea to I have an AI system, but also how does our organization support this? Because once you've gone through the entire build cycle and you now have a solution and you deploy it, you're not done with it, right? You can't just say, all right, the AI is in production, leave it where it is, let it do its thing, right? It constantly needs monitoring and evaluation, right? Models drift naturally. That's just how they work, right? So being able to come up with a mechanism for how you're going to monitor that output and make sure it is consistently doing what you want it to, and building out the organizational infrastructure to make sure that's happening every time. All of this is part of the journey, right? So you can see that you're not going from zero to AI, you're really going in this circle of thinking about what it is you're doing, thinking about your values, trying something out, taking in feedback, and doing something again.
Well, thank you so much. I really like that answer about the circular piece. And I know one of the things that when I was in uniform, we talked about a lot was just incremental modernization over time, how you're not really going to just get there all at once. And then this dedication to continually really fine tuning, addressing the drifts, you know, kind of recalibrating things, going back to take a look at whether or not you're actually getting the outcomes that you expected going into the project, and et cetera, are things that are going to be related to all AI projects. I really wanted to get to this question. You mentioned this earlier about the responsible use of AI, where, you know, people are afraid that the machines are going to take over, but for the sake of time, I won't go there. Let me just close with this. Any final thoughts? Let's start with you, Doug. Any final things that you want to share with us as it relates to AI within the Defense Department?
Yeah, I think the critical thing for us is moving at speed and scale, and being able to literally transform the department. So think about the challenges with that. The JAIC is a relatively small organization inside of a very large organization. And so we are looking for partners. Matter of fact, we are partnered with the GSA Center of Excellence and Krista's organization. We are partnered with many organizations across the federal government and within the DoD. We're obviously partnering with COCOMs and the services to get this done. We are also, and as you heard Secretary Esper and General Hyten talk about, we're partnering with industry. We're partnering with academia. We need all hands on deck to solve this problem and reach and transform the department. So that is really our focus. And the JAIC is the center point of trying to make, and pull all those things together. And that's really our mission. And we're very excited about it and very excited about the challenge.
So I'm being pulled off of the digital stage here. So Krista, any last comments?
No, I'll keep it short and sweet. I think that it's so exciting to see what not only the Department of Defense and the JAIC are doing, but how the entire federal government is thinking about innovation, thinking about this technology, and thinking critically about it, and how we can get it into our mission delivery in a way that is effective yet also responsible.
Thank you so much to both of you. It's great to see that there's a partnership between the Pentagon and the folks across the river in DC. This morning, we talked about artificial intelligence within the context of a commercial company. Now we talked about the federal government and the Defense Department. And in our next session, we're going to be talking about state, local, and education. So please stay tuned, and thank you for your time and attention.